Yep.
It's not because I learned about it in a textbook. It's because I lived it. That's called embodiment.
Exactly. Hello, hello, and welcome to the Weeder Life podcast. I'm your host, Erica Weederlight, and I am the CEO and founder of We the Light. I help humans who feel inadequate, broken, self-conscious, and shamed around their sexuality to reclaim their aliveness, their power, and to have a renewed relationship to pleasure while preparing themselves to feel hella confident to date others and themselves. AKA, I'm guiding people to live their #best lives. I have to give you a fair warning. I do unfortunately swear like a drunken sailor, so if you do have little ones by you, just be sure to pop in some earbuds. Alright friends, let's buckle up and let's rock it to this week's episode. Okay. Hi, I am so fucking jazzed. She saw me when she came into the Zoom. I was like, pleasure, 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 pleasure. Yes, like we were both, and she started dancing with me because she knows, like she feels me. I'm fucking obsessed. I always say this, but I genuinely am fucking obsessed with my next fabulous guest. Oh my god, I cannot talk. I can't wait to talk about all the juice. It's gonna be fab. My next guest, Brittini Burton, is the best, but she is a sensual empowerment facilitator, and she's the founder of BPE, aka Big Pussy Energy. And before that, Brittini traveled around the world solo for 8 years, which led her to be the female deckhand on the reality TV show Below Deck Down Under. From empowering women on deck, Brittini now empowers hundreds of women to embrace their sensual energy to lead them to their most turned on lives. Oh, shaking, shaking, shaking. Hey, hey. Hi, I can't fucking wait.
Hi, I'm so excited. I feel like every time I do a podcast or like any interview, it's like equally as therapeutic for me as it is for people to hear, because it's like, when do you actually get to deep dive into your own life and into your own life's mission and all that? So I'm really excited.
I'm so jazzed, and I'm so jazzed to go where we're supposed to, like with pleasure and turn on and sensuality. Like, I just can't wait to see what unfolds.
Yeah.
First and foremost, though, because I was thinking about this before we got on, I was like, wait, like for some folks, you know, pleasure could be like, what the fuck does that mean? Like, it looks so different for everyone, you know what I mean? And it feels so different for everyone. So I was like, wait, please hold. Before we get into this magical unicorn juicy episode, I was like, can you talk to me about what pleasure means for you, what that looks like, and really something I'm interested in, like, how did you work through the resistances that are natural that come up with pleasure?
Yeah, this is such a great question, and let's just make it as simple as possible.
Great.
Pleasure is just what feels good, emphasizing on feels. So it's not something that should feel good or something that makes sense to feel good, right? That's all mind and logical. Pleasure is what feels good. So it's a body sensation, right? And so originally pleasure is very connected to sex, and even on social media, the word pleasure is actual shadow banned. You need to use different ways to say the word pleasure, like take a vowel out or something for you to actually have your post be seen. So that's how tied it is to sex. However, so that was like my resistance, I would say, in the beginning. And then I had a really poor relationship to that sexual pleasure, because I used to believe that like my pleasure wasn't actually for me. It was actually for the partners that I was experiencing with at the time, and they were men. So my pleasure was for the male's ego versus for my own. And how that's been transformed and like evolved over the years. Like, I've been on my own sensual journey for almost 4 years now. It did start off still as sexual pleasure, but I would say over the past like year, specifically 9 months, pleasure has now changed to my compass, my inner guide, like what makes me feel good. So I use pleasure as like turn on, intuition, pussy. Like they all kind of interchange for me. They all kind of have different flavors.
Yes.
But pleasure is now my life's compass. So I choose pleasure. So if something is pleasurable, I lean into it a bit more.
Oh, okay, that's okay. I was like, wow, we're jumping right in because I was gonna say this. So we talked last week, and you know the deal. Usually these calls are like 10 minutes, like, hey, what do you want to talk about? And you and I went there,
Right.
like we were like, we must, yeah, we must. And I walked away. I have to tell you, I haven't told you this. Like, I walked away from that conversation, like something you said,
Mm.
or like how you live your life. I was like, oh fuck, that's so profound. Like, duh, I know this conceptually, and that sometimes I did do that, but you know the deal. It's a relationship. Like, I was obsessed with what you said. Like, you kind of like follow the, and you retweak it for me, but like you follow the curiosity, you follow the desire, you follow the impulse and the pleasure. I was like, oh, that's so hot that like you are down to be in the void, in the dark, and not the dark, but like I'm
Oh,
following
girl,
this. Like I'm
we go in the dark,
yeah.
sometimes, honest to God, you can't avoid it. I've tried.
Yes.
It's not good. So sometimes,
Yep.
seriously,
It is the dark.
sometimes it's the dark. It is. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Okay. Talk to me because I just was like, oh, like I could breathe when you said that. I was like, oh my god, that's so beautiful and so inspiring. Like, what does that look like for you? Like following your impulse of intuition or turn on or pleasure. Like, if someone's hearing this for the first time, like, what the fuck does that mean? And how are you honestly a warrior in that? Because it ain't easy. You know what I mean?
Well, I think it got more like, I don't like the word difficult, right? But it got more like
Right.
confronting, I would say, the more I chose to lean into it. Um,
Yeah.
because then it's like I was being tested. Like, how much do I really believe in this or believe in myself? So I think a lot of when it comes to pleasure, choosing pleasure, I think the foundation of that is trusting in yourself.
Ooh.
Because when you choose pleasure, like that is infinite. What that looks like, your life's possibilities just become infinite, right? Like as humans, we have so many different ways to live this life. And so we've been constructed this one view, one for at least America. We have this one American dream, which I think in 2023, we're all kind of like questioning it as a society, which is great, but like there's still this like foundation. So we have this like one American dream, right? And so it's like when you choose pleasure, you are not in control of what that looks like anymore, which is likely not going to be that one path that's the old white man chose it to be centuries ago. You know what I'm saying? So
Totally.
it's a lot of self-trust because you're doing something that at least generations, your grandparents, your parents might deeply disagree with, or peers even. So it's a lot of just trusting in yourself is how you establish the foundation for pleasure to even tap into your field.
I love that. And I think it's so important to like voice because it's fierce, but it's so important to voice this. Like you said, like that there's another option.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Because so many of us walk around like not even knowing that there's another option. And this is so amazing that like there's a space where you could follow yourself. And like you said, a huge part of that is trusting ourselves.
Yeah, I'd say it starts with you. And this is why community is so important, to have people in your life that also choose the path of what maybe it's personal development. That might be a different way you explain it. Path of pleasure, path of turn on, so that you're not actually isolated in it, that you're actually celebrated in it. Right. So like, that's why in my business, BPE, and other places like Mama Gina, which is where we met, is sisterhood is so important, because if we didn't have this sisterhood, I mean, isolation alone can make you go crazy. So having other people on your side, especially as women, supporting each other, it amplifies the like magnetism of it.
Oh, it's so good. I want to get into that too. I'm like, wait, there's so many things, so many directions I want to go, but let's talk. We must BPE. I mean, we have to talk to me about that. Like, let's go into your backstory a little bit. Like how, like, what was the catalyst, or what were you like, okay, like it's time to create the thing.
Yeah. Well, this is, at the time I didn't use the vocabulary of like, oh, follow my pleasure, but it was just like, it was just so intuitive. Like this, it doesn't really make sense how it happened. It just kind of all just, I kept leaning in. And then all of a sudden I'm a business owner, which was like a whole big, I was like, wait, I own a business. Like that was a whole thing in itself. Okay. Like this wasn't something I was prepping for. Okay. But I guess like, I mean, there's so many different ways to start, but I guess it started from my own personal journey. So big pussy energy isn't something that I saw that was a gap and I was like, oh, let me try to fill it. It was something that
Yeah.
I truly was embodying already in my life at that time for 3 years, now going on four, of sensual embodiment. So sensual embodiment, it's not like I learned this from anywhere. I think I found this word on Google someplace, but it's basically like embodying your sensuality. It sounds so simple. But the difference is that it's not a dance class, it's not learning steps, it's embodying it for you. And so I woke up to my power through sensual embodiment, through one day being in my mom's house when I was in between travels and I was staying in my brother's old childhood room. And I just broke up with a boyfriend that we were together for like 9 months, but it was a really codependent, enmeshed relationship. I actually moved to the UK because he lived there. So it was really enmeshed, really codependent on my end, but obviously it's a co-creation in sorts. So when I left that relationship and came back home, I was just intuitively, I was like, I just need to come back to myself because I completely lost myself. I had myself in the beginning, like I was already on this spiritual personal development journey. We met in Colombia. I just got out of a 200-hour yoga teacher training in the Sacred Valley, Peru. Like I wasn't like walking blind. I was already spiritual and already like empowered. Like you said in the beginning, I was traveling at that point for 6 years solo. Like I already was a
Wow.
very independent, worldly woman. And even that, I got lost, completely lost myself, completely chose the desire and the idea of love and lost myself in it. So I say all that because it can happen no matter how independent you are. The desire of wanting to be
Yes.
wanted can make you lose yourself. And so
Ooh.
pause.
Yeah, yeah, it was like pause, mic drop, hello.
Yeah, we flow it now. Um, so that was my experience. And I came home to Michigan and intuitively, like in I can't explain it more than just intuitively, my body, because I was so disconnected with her for 9 months in this relationship, to the point where my intuition, I just gaslighted myself and said it was childhood trauma. My intuition was yelling at me like, this is not what you're supposed to be. But I thought it was
Mm.
my childhood trauma being like, you just don't know how to love. So I was like gaslighting the feelings within myself. So this time in Michigan was really monumental to like learn to love and like nurture and come back to what I already know is true, which is my intuition. But I did it in a way that I've never done before. I actually did it from the feminine energetics point of view. So I literally started to research feminine energy. What is that? Because my whole life, I completely shamed, disconnected from my feminine energy. I grew up with a single mom. So she was mostly in her masculine in survival mode. And then I was like a backpacker traveling the world. Like I traveled mostly in Central and South America. So, and I was blonde. Like I was obviously not from those places. So there was a lot of like, I had to put a guard up a lot, it felt. So I was like very like in my masculine traveling as well, just surviving in other ways. So I was led to my intuition through the feminine energy and just like literally researching it, reading books by David Data. And I would say David Data's books were like what really woke me up, even though I was already like spiritual, like they just got me deeper. And then one day, I was learning about crystal wand work, which is like a crystal dildo. Like I was really in my feminine energy. And then one day my intuition just led me to stand up in front of the mirror, the small freaking mirror in this room that I had to stand up on a chair to even see my face. Like it wasn't easy. It wasn't intuitive. It was like an intuitive, like knowing that I just followed, and I was naked and the candle lights were dim and music was playing. And I just started dancing for myself in front of the mirror, but in a
Mm.
way where I was like, seducing myself. Like it's typically the movements that you would see someone doing for someone else, but I was doing it for myself. And it was, I swear to God, in that moment, like there was a moment where magic and just this like drop of knowing came into my body. And I was like, oh, everything that I was searching for in a relationship is within me. My aliveness, my sense of desire, that sense of turn on, all of it was within me. And from that moment
Ugh.
forward is when I dove deep and committed my life essentially to sensual embodiment and to loving myself the way a lover would. And now it's just the way I love myself.
Okay, not me crying.
No.
I'm like, oh my god.
Yeah.
That and I want to, I mean, there's a lot of shit that I really want to highlight here because I think it's juicy AF. But something I do want to highlight that I'm like, yes, is the embodiment piece of it, right? Like it's like, so many of us like went on which is all good, like a spiritual journey, and so much of it was in our heads. And I love for you, like a huge part of it clicking was when you did the embodiment, like the breathe, like being in your body.
Mm.
And it sounds like that's kind of how Big Pussy Energy start. Like, was that love affair of being in your body?
Yeah, I mean, it's so crazy to think like I don't even know what I felt like before. I mean, it was actually like it was 4 years ago, so it's has some time has passed, and like I was young, right? I was like 25, 24, so like time has passed, and like everyone feels probably so different in their body at 24 than they do at 29 or like older. But yeah, it's pretty crazy because when I think about it, like I was traveling the world solo again, like for 6 years, and like so my root chakra, my sense of safety, my sense of home was just in myself.
Mm.
But like I didn't feel like that. I just kind of like was floating, like going from one country to the next, just like taking things as they come. Which obviously I learned so much from that experience. And now, years later, I'm now integrating it. But yeah, my biggest spiritual, I didn't have like a spiritual awakening. Like there wasn't like a moment where I like was asleep and then I woke up or like whatever. It's kind of always kind of energetically been there. And I've had moments in my life where it deepened. So this was like,
Yes.
I would say this is the beginning of everything for me,
Yeah.
even though I was already kind of
Yeah.
on that path, but just in a different light.
Oh, that's so good. I want to talk about, actually, fuck it, let's go there. I want to know because I'm obsessed with this question. I ask all of my, like, everyone's like, why do you love this question? But I think it's an insight. Like, talk to me about how you presence and prioritize your pleasure, like as a practice. Like, walk us through that. So if someone's, interested in this conversation, they're like, ooh, next steps, obviously we'll talk about your work and my work and all that, but like you as a human,
Mm-hmm.
how do you do it? How do you prioritize it? How do you make it, a thing daily?
Well, okay, so I'm really fortunate that it's like my life.
Yeah,
Like
totally.
my life's purpose is to like bring women into their bodies because
Yes.
like a big thing is pleasure, but really my biggest big pussy energy is like bring women to their body so that they can tap into their power. Like that's the first step. The first step is just guiding women to their bodies so that they know where their power is held because we're so used to it being held in other places or we're like programmed to think it's held in other places. So the first step is being like, no, bitch, everything that you need is within you. And then you teach them the process of like, now you know how to connect to your body. Now connect to pleasures because a lot of women don't even know what pleasure feels like, maybe on a sexual level,
Yes.
but not like on an everyday occurrence or like enough for something to guide you. So that's a tangent. But I would say like my own pleasure practice. I mean, the story that I just told you, how like I just danced in front of the mirror, and then from that day, that's all I did. I still do
Yeah.
that
Yes.
every day. The room I'm in right now talking to you is literally what I call my BP room. There's a shaggy rug, pillows, a full length mirror to the left of me. This is where I do my BPE work when I'm with clients. And then this is like where I go in the morning. This is like what maybe other people call office, maybe some people call meditation room. This is my sensual embodiment room. So
Oh.
for me, that's what that is. But before I have a 2 bedroom apartment. Before I just lived in a room that I was renting. So it was like a corner of my room. So there's no excuse. I've done it as a little corner. Now I have my own room. But my piece to pleasure is music and a mirror. And the mirror is like really important because the mirror becomes your witness and you become your own witness. So so someone can learn how to dance and move in their body in a pleasurable way, but then when you bring a mirror into the play, you're actually being witnessed in your pleasure. So that then it might feel uncomfortable and yucky at first because it's like awkward, but then you get so used to it that then it just becomes natural and innate. And then that is where like pure confidence and empowerment stems from, is because you've already seen yourself in what pleasure looks like. You're not performing it. You're not doing what other people look like in pleasure. You're doing it for yourself this time.
Oh my god, so many fucking good things. Okay, but I do want to highlight this because I feel like for me too, like I mean, Ooh, like I was the most. I mean, I was a very confident child, and then really not confident. But this work is the thing. Like I went to therapy and this and that. Like this work is the thing that helped my confidence. And like you just voiced in presence that so beautifully. Like making, how do I say this? Making the space for the pleasure, seeing ourselves in the pleasure. Oh, this is what I wanted to say. ADHD brain. Is I think there's like a comparison sometimes in the like for the advanced folks, like in the pleasure world. Like it's like, and I just had a client earlier today, and she's quite advanced, and she was like, I don't know. I see on Instagram like people are drinking red wine and rose petals, and I'm like, that's great for that. Like if that's their truth, that's so fucking hot. But that like, so I love that you kind of made a space to voice like your pleasure, and witnessing yourself in your pleasure is connected to our confidence. Like I just wanted to highlight that. I want to go back, but I want to highlight that because I think that's so huge.
Yeah. I mean, a huge part of BPE did stem like the root for me. And then obviously the more I got into it, I was like, oh, actually there's a deeper root and a deeper root. But like the conscious level when I first started was because sex was just so depleting to me. And a big part, the reason why I got into that relationship that ended up being like a codependent relationship is because I just really wanted to experience pleasure and sex in a way that I knew was possible. Haven't physically experienced it, but I knew sex was like a gateway to like God, a gateway to a depths of myself. And a lot of that, the sex that I had to eat it outside of that relationship, in that relationship was very performative, very like,
Mm-hmm.
this is what it's supposed to look like. This is what they want me to sound like, all of that. So
Yeah.
that was a big thing that also BPE has. It's like, I don't really talk about it, but there's codes in it about like, do what makes you feel pleasurable, because I can guarantee that it's so much more sexier if you are with someone to be in your pleasure and like almost like don't even realize that they're there because you're so engulfed in your own pleasure, and they're just going to get so turned on by you being so turned on.
Yes. Wait. Okay. That was the other thing. I was like, what was the other thing I had to say? And you nailed it. Thank you for taking me there. Is that, and I don't want to get like lost in story, but you know, I did this work for many years, and then I like kind of forgot like stuff. You know the deal. It's like it's pleasure's a relationship. I like kind of forgot, or how do I get back? And I was squeezing it like from a brain place, like fucking pleasure. Like I, you know, like I'm like make it happen, Erica. Like pleasure, pleasure. Like I was squeezing it and like trying to pop it like a pimple. And you like that ain't. It's not gonna work. Like from that, like it's not gonna work. It like you said, it's in the body. It's real. It's being present. But when I was trying to like conceptually squeeze it, it just it wasn't gonna happen. So can you? You talked a little bit about that, but can you talk to us about that, like being in our body, being present, like that place versus like I'm gonna squeeze and try to make pleasure happen.
Yeah, I mean, I've definitely been on that side so deeply. Like I would used to get headaches in sex because I was literally mentally trying to squeeze an orgasm out. And obviously now we're talking about sexual pleasure, but like even if it's like life pleasure where you're like you're kind of, if you're trying to squeeze life pleasure out, it kind of feels like you're constantly searching, and it's like nothing's
Mm,
never enough because you're like trying to find
yes.
it. Like lack, not enoughness.
Yes.
That's like squeezing life pleasure. So I've experienced both. And obviously, like it's always a spiral. You're always going to be tested. It's pleasure's not a destination. BPE is not a destination. It's a commitment and it's a journey. And BP just has tools for you to be on this journey. So I say all that because I think it's good to have this. Don't have the illusion that like once you experience pleasure, like you're done. Like
Right.
it's it's
Right.
never ending because pleasure is literally infinite. There's no ceiling to pleasure. So um but the biggest thing, and this is why like sensuality or sex is such a great breeding ground for like personal development, because I learned so much about life through sensuality. Sensuality is like sensual movement. What makes movement sensual is how slow you go.
Ooh, yeah.
Like if you do like some hip shakes like really, really fast, like Shakira, that's like really beautiful. That's like hip movement. But if you go really slow, like as if your body's encased in a room of honey,
Mm,
that's what makes it more sensual. And then when you bring your hands to your body, so your hands are now on your legs or they're on your waist or they're on your stomach while you're moving your hips, that's what makes it sensual. Sensuality is touch, sensuality is sensation, it's feeling. So when it comes to how do you choose pleasure? It's really just like being present, which is, you know, a meditation itself, but it's a lot of it is slowing down. A lot about it is,
Mm,
and like, trust me, girl, that has been my life's biggest test. So I'm always like,
same, same.
when, like, you talk about the dark, and like just being in the dark night shit. It's like, when is this going to be done? Like, I'm over, and that makes it worse. And you just need to like slow it down,
Yes.
give it
Yep.
time,
Yep.
find the pleasure even in the discomfort, which, God, it sounds so stupid, and like, because it can be really challenging at that. But
Yeah.
like, there is pleasure. There is pleasure.
Yeah. Oh my God, so many things. You actually said something, and I don't remember if you remember this, but it was in the program that we did together. And Regina, Mama Gina, said something to a student, and she said something to the effect, I'm gonna butcher it, but you'll get the point of like, you need to rip pleasure out of the jaw, like the jaw or the mouth of death. And I remember being like, and I remember so ignorantly at the time, I'm like, got it. Like, I'm a pleasure expert. Got it. And then now that I'm, going through a lot of personal stuff, I'm like, fuck. But like, I have to, like, okay, I have to recenter around that. Like, even in the darkness, even through grief, and which we know in our practices that we teach, rage and grief, like, how can I still find my aliveness and my radiance and my turn on, even in this?
Yeah. That's where the real test comes. And that's a big thing. It's like,
So
I feel
true.
like that's what separates our work from like a lot of other, like, I don't know, sensual, feminine, and coach women, is that like, in BPE, like, we don't, and like, of course, Mama Gina's pleasure coaching, we don't ignore
Mm.
the trials and tribulations that life literally will bring to you. I wrote this in an email the other day. It's like, you can be the most turned on person and experience loss and experience
Yes.
heartbreak and like, that is going to happen. Like, no matter, even if you're with your partner for the rest of your lives, one of you's going to die first. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah.
you're
Yeah.
always, like, life is going to break you, and that's the beauty of it, honestly. And so
Right.
that's the thing with what we do, is like, we're not just saying, oh, let's dance and just feel always happy. It's like, let's move so we can move that energy, because you can feel it, but you don't need to keep it. It can transmute. It can
Yes.
transmute into power, can transmute into like depth and wisdom versus like stagnant fear.
Yeah. And I love that you voice that, because it's like both sides of the spectrum. Like, we don't need to stay stuck in it, and we're not bypassing it either. We're not like, yes, titty tassels. You know what I mean? Like, I'm titty tasseling my way through grief. Like, I'm titty tasseling, but also like, I'm holding it. Like, yeah, I just want to voice that it holds all of it. Like, and it makes all of it welcome and seen and loved and supported, which is awesome.
Right, because that's the feminine. The feminine is everything. Feminine, and like, for some
Right.
people, if that's like, what the fuck is feminine? Think of like Mother Nature. That is the most feminine
Yes.
energy in this world. She can fucking destroy you. Not just you,
Yes.
but countries, continents, with its like oceans and hurricanes and like tornadoes, everything. And she brings us so much beauty every single day.
Yeah. Oh, that's a good one.
Mm-hmm.
That's good. Yeah. No, I'm really glad that you voiced that, and especially I'm glad we went into that. It's not just the rainbows and butterflies. Actually, I want to go to this because we talked about this too. That it's not just. Listen, I say this. I think every fucking podcast episode, but like, it's not just us being on a chaise lounge, getting feathered, and getting grapes fed to us. Though we love that. Though there's a place for that. Like you said, it's I hate the word fighting, but I think you get me. Like, fighting for your pleasure, being an advocate for your pleasure, prioritizing your pleasure. Yeah, like, no matter what.
The like shade couch or whatever, and the grapes being fed to me comes after you went through the job life.
Right, right. Wait, tell me. Wait, say more about that.
Well, like, that will happen. Like,
Right.
like, being able to surrender and just fully like go, and to be fed, and to be in your
Yes.
full like receiving, will happen. And the jaws of life will happen again. And then you'll
Yep.
be you'll be able to receive again. And there's almost like a
Yeah.
comfort in knowing, like, that's why they say, like don't take for granted where you are. Like, even in like the dark, like when you know, and then you tell yourself like this too shall pass, that is true. And when you're in your height and your high, that too shall pass. Like, it's all past.
Yes.
So it's like, might as well
Right.
be present, because it's going to move, it's going to change, it's going to grow, and it's going to be everything. So just like the feminine, it's like what we teach women is like, give yourself full permission to be all of it, because
Yeah.
we grow up in this society that's really patriarchal, and it's not even, I wouldn't say masculine energy, it's just patriarchal, where it's like you are black and white. You're either like sad and depressed, or you're like joyful, but you can't be both,
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
something wrong.
Exactly.
So
Right. There's no nuance.
right.
There's no new, and I think you said something really cool too, is like knowing the cycles that happen. You can't, we can't knuckle or like squeeze out, we can't white knuckle or squeeze out pleasure, because if our hot, like you said, if we're on the mountaintop and living la vida loca and everything's fucking fab, versus like the pleasure in the pits of hell, like those are two different flavors. And so, like, you know what I mean? So I think it's important also, and I talk about this a lot, like being accepting of the cycles and seasons. And it's a relationship pleasure, so it's going to look different. So you on the mountaintop, kickball changing, that pleasure is so hot. We love her, but like that's very different than the grief pleasure. And, you know, not one is better or worse. It's just a different vibe. And like kind of what you're saying, like it's a sin or it's a shame to be like, nah, I'm not looking there. Like it's so fabulous when we're present, like, ooh, like the different textures, flavors, you know, things that can come out of that particular season or cycle that we're in.
Yeah. Yeah. The reason I am who I am today is because of a really dark season. And I'm
Yeah.
always,
Word.
you know, I'm so grateful for it. It was like somewhat recent. It's not too far from my own psyche. But even so, I am literally the grounded, like I feel wiser. I feel more connected to who I truly am because of that time. So there's
Yeah.
always gifts in it, even though it's
Agreed.
hard. Like, I
Yeah.
know, like, trust. So
Yeah.
yeah. And then because it's
Yeah.
like I get little ones here and there, like little things come back from that time. And it's just a great opportunity for me. A lot of it's like trusting in myself, like trusting that this too shall pass, trusting that I got my back. So a lot for me is a lot of self-trust that comes through.
Oh, I love that. I want to talk about that with the self-love piece, but I do want to highlight, because I think this is a big boy to highlight, is my friend Leora Udut always says this. She's a founder of Goddess on the Go, and she always says, you gotta slow down to slay. And I think it's fucking genius, but it's true, because when I'm trying to squeeze out the pimple of pleasure, I'm usually like, ah! Like all of like, ah! Like all over the place, like fucking chaotic. And I am so glad you voiced like, you gotta slow down. Like it is in the five senses, it's in the sensations. And if you're like, bleh, like ripped out of your body and like, ah, you can't fucking be with it. So I just want to like, again, highlight that. If someone's like, where do I start? Where do I begin? I'm really glad that you voiced like, slowing down. Like it's in the slowing down, the feeling of our breath, feeling of our body, and feeling in the
And you
sensations.
know what? When you slow down, this is the kicker. And Mama Gina taught me this, because at the beginning of our program, I was fast as fuck, and she literally told me like, you need to like we had a hot seat moment. It was like me and her and all of y'all. And she was like, you need to slow down. She goes, because you feel more, you receive more when you slow down. And so that's why it's so scary to slow down, because at first you are going to feel a lot more. So if you're feeling like really intense, uncomfortable, like feelings in the body, you're going to feel it. But like the famous quote, feel it to heal it, and it will pass through instead of stuffing it down.
Oh, I'm so glad that you brought that up. That's so good. And you're right. It's like that's why people want to bypass. You know what I mean? Whether it's with food, TV, any of it, and no shame in the game, but it's sometimes could be intense when we're like, whoo, I'm here, I am right here right now with my shit. But I love what you said of like, ooh, this is uncomfy, but like I trust myself that I have my back, I have my own back. And this is why you and I do this work because we could hold people, you know, when they need
Oh yeah,
holding.
because we've been through it.
Um,
I'm like,
yep.
it's not because I learned about it in a textbook. It's because I lived it. That's called embodiment.
Exactly. Yes, we're like, hi, we've lived these things. We got you. We see you.
That's the best
We're holding all
medicine.
the
Is like I
things.
know when like a big thing that I really love is when I feel seen. And like
Yeah.
what can make me like lose my mind literally sometimes is like if I feel like I'm the only one experiencing something, then I'm like, am I going crazy? So it's great because
Yes.
there's times where it's like feels like you're going fucking insane. So it's like it's so good to have this, especially like a woman look at you in your eyes and be like, I get it, and you're gonna be okay. It's gonna pass, you
Yes.
know?
Yeah, that's so good. I feel like you've been flirting with us on this, so I'm like, ooh, let's sashay to the self-love stuff. Like you started talking about it with your practices. Can you talk? This is kind of a general question, but I just want you to go in a direction that you feel called to. Like for you, your connection to the self-love, the pleasure, the turn on, like talk, yeah, because I know that's self-love is a huge component of your work.
Yeah, it's funny. I feel like I don't even like associate the word self-love because I feel like it's such a big umbrella. I'm like, what the does that even mean? But
Right.
but
Exactly.
like, and because I feel like there's so many trends around what self-love looks like, and I
Yes.
controversially disagree with most of the trends,
Same.
which are what people think self-love is like doing something, like
Yes.
getting something outside yourself. So getting a manicure, getting new clothes, going on a sushi date. Those are all amazing. Those are all ways to show love to yourself, but that's not self-love. That's just showing it.
Yes. Yeah, I say this all the time. I'm like, self love is not the sheet masks. We love a good sheet mask. We love a good candle. I have one right fucking
Yeah.
next to me. Love them, but like that. And I think I actually was stalking you before because I was like, ooh, what do I want to talk about? And I think you said this, so please expand. You said something like, and I totally fucking agree. Like bubble baths or face masks are not self love. It's a dopamine
Yeah.
hit. And then you kind of talked about like what. So talk us through that. Like the dopamine hit and then like for you what actually is the self-love and how you show up for it.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like when we do those things, it feels good. Like I'm not bashing on a bubble bath because that is like a form of
Oh
like,
yeah.
giving. It's giving love to yourself. Giving if you I'm not a huge like I don't wear makeup. I literally don't have nails. So that's not like my thing. But like if it is your thing, that's a way to give yourself love. However, self-love is unconditional love. Okay. So we can
Yes.
to just dip the toe back into like the dark night stuff. That's and like finding pleasure in that. That's loving yourself even in the uncomfortable darkness, right? And then self-love is also loving yourself as a quirky, maybe awkward or maybe like loud, whatever you are, self as well. And not if you lose those 20 pounds or when you have that partner. It's that loving yourself in this exact moment. That's what self-love is.
Yes. Oh, it's so good. I always say too, I'm like, it's so fucking easy to love the version of ourselves that like whatever it is, right? Like it's the spiritual or presents as, you know, deemed as acceptable. Like that shit's kind of still, you know, could be crunchy, but like pretty easy to love. But I love that you voice like, yeah, 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 like we love the sheet mask, we love the bubble bath, but the self love is holding space and being cool with the nitty gritty. Sometimes, you know, the a little crunchy versions of ourselves. Not that they're bad or wrong, but
Yep.
yeah, I love that you're like, no, that's real fucking self love.
Yeah. I it like the best test is like when you get triggered or like when you do something
Yes.
that you're like, oh, that actually wasn't my best move. A big component to self-love is self-compassion. So like loving yourself even when maybe like the next day you're like, shit, I shouldn't have done that. Or like I wish I would have done that differently. So instead of like negatively like bashing yourself, it's like that's where like holding space and like loving yourself even through things that you wish you've done differently. Like that's what like grows self-love is like loving you through those times where you wish things were different or wish that you reacted differently, you know? So
Yeah.
self-love is like just a lot of like holding space for who you are and being open to change, like being open to like growing and learning new ways. If there are spaces in your life where you're like, oh, I actually don't want to be anxiously attached to someone my whole life. I rather have my own self sovereignty, you know?
Mm.
So I would say like a bit like, man, everything just goes back to like sensual embodiment for me. So
Yes.
okay, so I love my body. I actually don't like, I intuitively eat. I eat whatever the fuck I want. I drink whatever I want. Like I work out 3 times a week. I've always been really athletic. I've always like, whatever. I have an amazing relationship to my body. However, when I was in college, I did not. I mean, I think a lot of people can agree. In high school, I didn't. I honestly thought so. Senior year of high school till freshman year of college, I would binge and then purge. So I would do like really crazy binges where I'd probably eat like 3,000 calories, and I had specific foods that I liked because I knew I could purge it easily.
Yeah.
And then that kind of like faded away where I stopped binging and purging. But then just the relationship with food wasn't good still. Like I would like keep track of what I ate, even though I didn't really do anything with that. It's like I wished I gave a fuck. So I just was like, there was so much energy in my mind about food. And then, a few years ago, I was like, I kind of like dawned on me. I was like, wait, I used to have such a poor food and body image. It just kind of, I was like, oh, I must have just grown out of it. And then you know what? I looked at an old journal last year, and the journal was from 2021, which is when I started my sensual embodiment journey after I got back from the UK. And in that journal, while I was in Michigan, while I was doing my like feminine energy intuitive guidance, I was still talking about food and like, oh, I shouldn't have eaten that. I wish I did. So in that moment, I realized, oh, I didn't grow out of it. I just naturally learned to love my body through sensual
Mm.
embodiment. When I did sensual embodiment, that wasn't my goal. I actually had no goal.
Yeah.
But from constantly loving and going slow and like looking at my body with just pure love, which is part of the practice of sensual embodiment, I'm not just touching my body and not connecting to her. I'm like talking to her or energetically sending love to her with my hands. That just then triggered this natural sense of like, I love you.
Mm.
And now I gain and lose weight so easily. Like I feel like that's, in the winter I'm 10 pounds heavier than in the summer. And like that doesn't bother me. Like, because I trust myself. I'm not going to go over the deep end of like what's unhealthy for my body. I'm not going to go too far any direction, because I just trust myself. And so sensual embodiment has completely changed my relationship to my body, to my heart, to my mind, and to my soul, really, and my pleasure.
Yeah, I'm obsessed. And I talk about this when I lead movement classes. People are like, why have you gotten into this? Like, especially the embodiment piece. And I'm like, I dead ass have been it's every fucking size. Every size. And before this work, it didn't matter what size, what jean size, what dress size, the self-loathing, the anxiety, the hatred was there. But then when I did this work, like I said, I did every modality, affirmations, therapy, this, that. But it wasn't until this work where, like you said, you nailed exactly what I was saying. Like, you really have to be with your body. Like, the sensuality really is like fucking a love balm, not bomb. You know what I mean? Like, it's so healing and fabulous. And something I want to point out too for BPE, I think one of your videos you were saying like when you were teaching class, you were like, yes, this class is like, I'm cliff noting here, but like this class is hot. You're moving your body. It's fierce, but really it's not just a dance class. It's really a self-love practice. You kind of touched on that just now. Like, talk to us more about for you how that's expanded and been the self-love journey.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, the classes basically, it's so funny now that I do the classes. It's like I'm basically replicating the exact experience that I had in my little brother's old bedroom that night that I stood up on the chair and looked at myself, because now I rent a dance studio and I only go to places that have mirrors, and now BPE is like a neon pink light. So I have my BPE sign and the lights are dim and all the lights are pink. Like it's just this feeling of like held essentially.
Yes.
Um,
Yeah.
so that's like the atmosphere. So like I think that's also really helpful, is to create a space that feels sacred. And then what I do is like I lead them through an embodiment practice. When this is what's wild. is all of our eyes are closed. No matter if you first time there or your 20th time, my eyes are even closed. I don't even know what the fuck you're doing. So it gives you full permission to move your body because I guide you through movements that aren't too crazy. They're like sensual yoga movements, I would say.
Yeah.
So it's not like crazy. It's just like it can be uncomfortable at first. So when you eliminate sight and you eliminate this perception of judgment, you're then able to actually ignite the sight from within. And that's really what we're waking up is the power within you. And so doing that with a group of women is also really powerful. I have everyone go in a circle. So you're not just like stacked in front of each other. Like we're literally creating this energetic circle. You can't see anyone, but you can feel everyone. So that's really potent when we do that together.
It's so good. I'm like, I want to fly down and take one. I'm like, oh my God, I want to take your classes so bad.
Yeah, I'm ready to expand. I'm ready to have people come because Austin has been such a great breeding ground for this because like Austin's so Austin, just like big pussy energy, amazing. Like if I started doing this in like Idaho, I don't think I would have the same energetics behind it, you know? But Idaho
Totally.
needs it. So,
Yes.
that's like where that's the momentum. It's like Austin has allowed it to have its breath and like its fire. Now I want it to be experienced by people who don't have these spaces.
This is a random fucking question that I did not like prepare or think about, but I'm like, oh, like I got the hit that like you said, which is fantastic that like you're in a space where people are like, yes, BPE, you know what I mean? Like they celebrate it, which is hot. Like, can you talk to, especially that, and we kind of talked about this last time, like that you know, are in the public eye, right? Like you had that exposure. Like, can you talk about how you've navigated, how do I want to word this? Like, and you kind of already get what I'm going at. Like, how have you navigated naysayers or like the witch wound or people being like, what the fuck? Like, how have you navigated that part of it? And how, honestly, how have you gotten turned on of like, I'm still showing up for my fucking mission. I'm coming for you, Idaho. Like, how have you stayed in that?
Okay, this is so funny. Like, what's so wild is like I don't get too much negativity. You would be surprised
Yes.
because I'm like you said, I came from a reality, or like obviously I didn't come from that, but a lot of people, my audience, know me from a Bravo reality show, which kind of like, not many people think too much about reality stars. And then they come onto mine, and I'm like, basically, fuck, I'm basically saying everything that you've been taught is wrong. Here's why, you know? So, which is amazing. But, and the people that do say anything to me, I don't really take it. Like, it doesn't affect me at all because I know what's
Yeah.
true. And I do believe, a lot of my content could look sexualized. I've like really dimmed it down a bit. So it's not overtly sexual. And it wasn't even sexual before, but like, I paid more attention. But even then, like, people didn't really say much. And I really do believe it's because I embody it from a space of like, this is my truth. I'm not doing it for
Yeah.
you. I'm not doing it for the male gaze. I'm not doing it for likes. I'm doing it because this is my truth. And when I lead other women in this, then they wake up to their truth. And that's what motivates me.
Oh, and that is so, for me, hearing that, like, that's so safe. Like, that feels so safe. It's not the performative, like, the performative, like, I feel really held. Like, I'm sure, like, being in your audience or being in your space, like, I know that you're the real deal doing the damn thing. You know what I mean? So I'm like, I can breathe with you. I feel safe with
Yeah.
you. It's not like this, like, performative, contorted, like, sticky thing.
Yeah, what's like so fun too is like when my mission is just to lead women into their bodies, which is long story short, like my mission is just to lead women into their truth. Like that is
Mm.
so exciting because it's not like I'm a business coach where I'm like, oh, I'm going to get you like 10 clients or like 100 followers or like 10,000. Like that's a goal. That's like a stagnant, like this is what you can expect. I don't have any like these are the results because the results are you connecting to your body and connecting to your truth. And that is going to look different for every woman. So like
Yes.
I had a woman in my group program. She did 3 months group program with me. She owned a business and then like it was her own business she owned. She liked it. She was actually famous people were contacting her for her products and all that. And then by the end of the program where she really understood her body and connection and tapping into pleasure, she chose to end that business because it wasn't turning her on in the way that she knew a different business idea would. So she closed that business down and then started a new one and then got a book publisher deal right after that big decision. So that was her truth, right? I'm not trying to do that.
Yes.
I'm not teaching people to close a business and then restart a bit. Like, that's not what I'm doing. What I'm doing is leading you
Right.
into your truth, which that becomes such a juicy experience, not just for her, but for me to be like, oh my God, like that's what's
Yes.
possible, you know?
Oh, it's so good because, like you said, it's not just like okay, which is all good. Like, there's a place for that. Like, we're gonna walk in through this
I mean,
program.
I
You're
have
gonna do
business
A, B, and
coaches. Like, I pay
C.
them. Like, that's,
Yeah,
I
same.
want
Love
that.
it.
I just have a
Right.
different clientele, you know?
Yes. Exactly. But like, I think that is that's the void kind of that we talked about in the beginning. Like, that's the that's the void of following I don't know, our desire. Why I'm laughing is because, I think especially in like the Instagrammable world, which is great, has its pros, but it's like follow your desires. It's like, what the fuck does that mean? So I'm so glad that you started this episode off of like what that means for you and like what that looks like. And I swear, like I said, we talked last week, and even like dumb things, like I've been walking around being like, what do I actually desire to eat? Or like, instead of just going on, mundane autopilot, like D, I'm walking through life, like that really that was a good reminder for me of like, hey, E, you're here, you're present, like follow your essentially your intuition.
Yeah, I mean, that practice I sometimes need have myself come back to, like in moments where I'm getting tested on my self-trust. I'll like remind myself, okay, what do I want? Do I desire a bubble bath or a shower right now? Like the littlest things. And then like, do I desire a cookie or do I desire an apple? It's
Yes.
not, sometimes you do need to go back to that level. It doesn't mean I'm going backwards. It just means like sometimes you need to ground back into like one, free will, like not on
Right.
autopilot, not the 95% of your self or of your consciousness. Go back to like presence. So yeah, it's always such a great question to ask. Like if desire is kind of a sticky word, you can be like, what do I want? Right. Which that phrase can
Yes.
be really triggering for a lot of women when you're asked, what do you want? Because we're so not used to being asked that. And then there's usually like this like eagerness of like, what do you want? Like, what do you want? It's like to give yourself space to like learn how to answer that question for yourself first. That makes it easier to answer it for someone else.
Totally. And you know the deal. It's like the bridge for like partnership, like sexually, or like even, in self pleasure. It's like, what do I want? Do I want, a firm grasp? Do I want a feather like touch? Like it's all connected. And I have clients sometimes be like, all right, I'm making these major life decisions. I don't know how to get there. And like you said, I'm like, let's start with like, do you want the cookie or do you want the apple? Because it like you're saying, it makes safety within the body. It makes safety of like, oh shit, I could trust myself. I could follow myself. You know the deal. It's like that stacks. So we have that self trust for the bigger decisions of like what state am I going to move to?
100%. Like there's no way that like I can sit here and be like, oh, just ask yourself what you want. And it's like the first question is like, do I quit the job or do I go off and travel? Like start with the little things. Maybe do it for like a week. Like it doesn't have to be a
Yeah.
long time, but like learn what your body's yes are and what your body's no is. And usually a yes feels very like light and expansive and like magnetizing, like your insides kind of open up, and then a no kind of feels like like tightening or contracting. For me, a no is like I can tell in my body when my no, like my body like my heart feels closed, and then my mind instantly tries to like conceptualize it or like talk me out or through it. Like I have a really strong fucking mind, so when I know I'm in my mind, I'm like, okay, let's ask the question again without the mind's interference.
Oh, that's so helpful because I think we're not taught like what's a yes and a no in your body. So I think that's great home play too. If someone wants to go home and like, what did I get from that episode? I think it's like learning yeses or nos. I want to ask you two quick cues just because I'm obsessed with this thing. This question about the pleasure is how does it stay top of mind for you? Is it just like, Erica, I do this life for work, so like it's always there? Like, and if someone's new, how would you suggest them keeping it in the front of their brain body?
um well, pleasure to me is like I think it changes every season. So like
Yeah.
right now I'm in a season where again I'm being tested on my self-trust. So it's like pleasure to me is like finding safety in myself.
Ooh.
Ironically, because that's my medicine. So of course I'm being tested on it. Like that is just like the
Right.
universe, like humor. So that's what it looks like for me in a season where I'm like on top of the world, like the summer, spring type season, you know, like internally. That's where I feel like that's more of like how can I like because that's like this overpouring cup of pleasure. So it's like giving it to others from a space of overpour, right? So there's just like
Yes.
knowing when pleasure is innately for you right now, and then when pleasure can be for others in a
Oh,
space of
okay.
pleasure. Yeah.
So good. So I'm laughing that every time we give a response, I'm like fucking orgasming because you're so good. I'm like, yes. I'm like, am I okay? Because you're so good. Okay, I'm gonna ask you really quick how we find you, but before we do, before we wrap, are you like, wait, E, hold on. I have to say this. This is on my heart, on my mind. Any like last minute juicy tidbits that you're like, I must share with folks?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, the biggest thing that I just want, if anyone is listening, is that you are so much more powerful than anyone outside of you will ever understand or give you credit for. And the first person that needs to understand that is yourself. And the way to do that is through your body. So, how I would suggest you to first do that is I swear, buy a full length mirror. It's like $40. You can get like a little Target one. Or if that's like going to stop you, go in your bathroom mirror and just like start touching your body really slowly for like 5 minutes. And it sounds so simple, but if you do that for 5 minutes every morning for a week, I can guarantee you you're going to feel a shift within yourself and how you perceive yourself.
And I think Regina said it best. She was like, the pleasure is the simplest thing to conceptually understand. Everyone's like,
Yeah.
duh. But the actual consistent practice of it is, as we know, it's work, but it's great work. And I want to highlight before we sashay away is like I want to highlight for you like the witnessing of being in our pleasure is it actually can move me to tears because we don't really see ourselves. You know, like the mirrors, like you said, it's like that accountability, but it's so beautiful of like witnessing ourselves in pleasure, in our radiance, in joy. Like I think that's so fab, and I'm gonna take you up on that
And in your
challenge.
rage and in your grief, swamp in front of a mirror, but you're not
Yes.
afraid of
Hell
it.
yeah. Ooh, ooh, that's so good. I can't
Yeah.
wait. I'm gonna put it in the show notes. Let's talk. This will be in the show notes too. But where can we find you? How can we do all the things and
So
play?
Instagram is where I love to be. So that's just Brittini Burton. Super easy. And then my website is bigpussyenergy.co. .com was taken.
Yes.
So we got .co. And it's really exciting. I don't know when this is going to come out, but October 31st, I'm launching my group program. So I'm launching it next week, but we're starting October 31st. And that's that 3 month group program that I mentioned that a woman went through and she chose to shut down her business because she tapped into her body and her pleasure and then started a completely new one and then got a book publisher. So it's a 3 month program, a group program. So you're with women. Like I said, community is really important where you learn all the tools and you learn all the practices that I do in my life and teach my clients. And it's just a portal for 3 months where you learn how to embody your big pussy energy, and it's called Embody Your BPE. So that's starting in a month. And of course, if you're in Austin, Texas, I teach every week on Wednesday night at 5:45. And that's all in my Instagram. Oh, and I have a lap
Oh,
dance
yes.
course, which is so fucking fun. Um, and this is
Yes.
so BPE where I somatically like teach you a lap dance. Like you do learn a lap dance, but the modality behind it is that to be witnessed in your power and not do it as a performance. So be witness in your power and be following your pleasure. So you're not doing the lap dance for the person in the chair, you're actually doing it for yourself, and the person in the chair is just witnessing you in it. So that has a lot of codes and things. So that's on my website as well.
Oh my God. Okay, great. So I'll put it in the show notes. But like I said, Instagram, your website, we can find
Yeah,
all of these fabulous
yeah, for sure.
treasures. You're literally the best. I cannot fucking thank you enough. I'm shaking in excitement. This was so
Yeah, me
fab.
too. I feel like it was I love it. So many good questions, so many alleys we went down.
thank you, seriously thank you so much for joining me on today's episode and on this podcast journey. And if you loved what we talked about today and you know another human who could definitely benefit from what was discussed, I would so appreciate if you would go ahead and share this podcast with them. Don't forget, hit subscribe or follow so you never ever miss an episode. And the great news is you can always follow me, my work, my blog, my podcast on my website at www.wethelight.org. And hey, remember, life is so much brighter when we shine. I'll see you next time.